All right.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the regular city council meeting for April 15th. I'd like to ask everybody in the audience, if they can, to stand as we start every meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any agenda additions, deletions, or amendments? Have everybody signed up on citizen participation? Okay. All right, as you come to the podium, if you would identify yourself to the folks at home. And Sandra Ross.
Yes.
You're right. Come on down. Yeah, right in the middle there. Right in the middle. Come on down. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
You just stand close to it, man.
Well, thank you for having me.
I like people that are shy.
Well, okay. Thank you for having me. I'm here as a citizen, but actually I'm representing the Bowie Education Committee. I joined a couple of years ago, and for the last 2 years, I have acted as the chair of the subcommittee, the scholarship subcommittee. And I'm here on behalf of the group to ask for your support for an in and out account for 2019-20, because each year we have at least about 20 students that will apply for scholarships, and our budget at this juncture is just $5,000. And this past year we only awarded 6 scholarships, and there were 20 very qualified candidates, but we had to use our best judgment, and even though everybody was great and they can do big things, we only have $5,000. So we're hoping, we're not asking for any money, we just need an in and out account. So when we do our fundraising and our donors, we need a place to store the money that is dedicated just for the education committee, for Bowie Education Committee. So that's all we're asking for, is an in and out account, no extra money.
That's always nice.
And the limit.
But first of all, before we get to that, I want to thank you for what you do. We have seen in the past the resumes and stuff from some of the applicants, and they're incredible.
Yes, they are.
And you guys do an incredible job trying to distill that down to 4 or 5 recipients every year. But you know, we always say that Dr. Trout's going to help me out here. The 3 most important things in Bowie are what?
Education, education, and then education.
So your committee is very important to us. Now, we have had some discussion about doing this thing for you, and I think we've identified and eliminated any of the problems. The only challenge we're going to have is we're going to have you sit down with probably the finance folks just to go over some rules about how you can raise money and what you can and cannot use when you're using the city's name in fundraising activities. So there's some limitations with that. And there are some other things we're going to look at in terms of maybe channeling some other kinds of scholarships to you guys. And so I think everybody up here agrees with your goal and appreciates everything you all do in that. And we really appreciate, the young people that are going off to, continue to make us famous.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, ma'am. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, item next. We have a presentation, and I've been doing this for a little while. This is probably one of the more unusual proclamations that we've done, and one of the most unusual purposes for a proclamation. So I would like to ask if Mr. Patterson can come out of his cage back there and join us.
He might bite.
Mr. Patterson, if you'll join us. Council, will you come down?
Yes.
Excuse me. Good evening, lad.
Good evening.
Come around here. Some of you that have known Mark for a long time have noticed that, up until very recent past, there's a striking difference in his haircut tonight from his usual haircut. And we're going to explain that. Like I say, there are a lot of ways to help people in this world, but the one we're going to talk about tonight is one, quite frankly, I didn't know existed. But after reading what he does and the purpose behind it, I'm moved by what he does and genuinely appreciate what you do, particularly for the young folks that benefit from it. To that end, I'm going to ask Mr. Marcus to do a proclamation for you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Patterson, thank you very much. How ironic we have this on the same night the wind blew my hair all out of my... This is a proclamation to you, which reads, whereas one of the many challenges of cancer and other medical conditions is the changes in physical appearance that the illness brings, and whereas an incredible nonprofit group called Locks of Love was founded in 1997 to help young patients experiencing hair loss and the related issues associated with medical treatment. And whereas Locks of Love can only exist through the efforts of caring men, women, and children that grow, then cut, and donate their hair to produce attractive and effective wigs for all patients. And whereas Mark Patterson has been an active participant in this effort, allowing his hair to grow for 2 years, and then cutting, donating that hair to Locks of Love to assist in this very special patient support activity. And whereas Mark Patterson has just recently made his 9th hair donation to this group in support of their cause. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Bowie, Maryland, thankfully and gratefully extends its most sincere appreciation to Mark Patterson for his ongoing acts of kindness, presented by the Council of the City of Bowie, Maryland on April 15, 2019, and its Mayor, G. Frederick Robinson.
You want to say something about the organization briefly?
Well, briefly, especially since I need to go back there and do some more switching. Locks of Love does both cancer patients and women with alopecia. I happen to know 3 people with 3 females with alopecia.
Could you tell people what that is? Most folks don't know what that is.
Alopecia is just a genetic thing where women lose their hair and they do not get it back. Men too, but as we can see, there are some that don't mind losing their hair. So, but females do, and ever since knowing these 3 with the alopecia and knowing some girls with cancer, I've decided that this is one thing that I could do, and luckily I have the support of staff and the city manager to be able to do that, because not too many managers and stuff will let guys grow their hair beyond their ears. So I really appreciate the guy from the Army letting me grow my hair. Thank you very much.
Okay. I think that is a fair demonstration just to tell you how talented and wonderful the city staff is here at Bowie and how blessed we are to have them. Mr. City Manager?
Mr. Mayor, we have no specific report. We're just ready to get into the budget here tonight. So.
All right, thanks. All right, council, gets consent agenda items A through J. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by, second by Dr. Trout. Any question on the motion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. New business, South Lake Carrington TIF Resolution R2219. Mr. City Manager?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. Our bond attorney will take over from here.
Good evening. I'm Lindsay Rader with Funk & Bolton, serving as bond counsel to the city in connection with the transaction. The resolution before you this evening approves the substantially final form of the contribution agreement between the city and Prince George's County, by which the city pledges its incremental tax revenues derived from real property taxes levied on properties within the Carrington Development District to support the tax increment financing special taxing district bonds to be issued by Prince George's County. Now, as you may recall, in January, the council adopted 2 resolutions, one approving the establishment by the county of the Carrington Development District, and the other ratifying, confirming, and consenting to the establishment by the county of the Carrington Special Taxing District, which are 2 geographically coincident districts. The county is proposing to issue and has legislative authorization to issue not more than $33 million of special obligation bonds that will be payable in the first instance from incremental tax revenues levied on the derived from the real property taxes levied by both the county and the city in the Carrington Development District, and in the second instance by special taxes levied by the county within the special taxing district. The city is not levying any special taxes. The resolution approves the substantially final form of the contribution agreement that is attached thereto, delegates to the authority to the city manager to approve, execute, and deliver the final version of the contribution agreement after determining there are no materially adverse changes made to the version before you and the final version. And also, because the county's bonds could eventually at some point, if they achieve an investment grade rating, be issuable or exchangeable in $5,000 denominations. There is an SEC rule known as Rule 15C212, which would require the county, as the issuer of the bonds, to provide certain annual information to the marketplace through a website known as EMMA. And the county will also have to post notice of certain occurrences with respect to those bonds or the county. The city, because at least initially, the city will be covering roughly 1/3 of the debt service on the bonds through its pledge of its incremental tax revenues, is treated as an obligated person for purposes of Rule 15C212, and as such obligated person, the underwriter of the bonds is going to require the city to enter into a continuing disclosure agreement by which the city agrees to provide certain annual information with respect to its incremental tax revenues, parcels that go to tax sale. What is common in these transactions and what is proposed is that continuing disclosure agreement. The disclosure obligations really will rest with the administrator for the district, but in case there is ever no administrator in place, the burden of the reporting, which we will minimize as much as possible, would fall upon the city, primarily upon the city's director of finance to compile the information. And he or she would do so over the 30-year life of the bonds, working closely with the county because the county collects the city taxes. This resolution delegates to the city manager the authority to approve, execute, and deliver the continuing disclosure agreement.
That's it.
I'm sorry?
That's our presentation.
Okay. I'm sorry?
There's a public hearing associated with this resolution.
Okay. But that's all the speakers we have?
Yes.
Okay, anybody sign up to speak?
No, sir.
Declare the public hearing, including questions, council? Mr. Dufour, or Mr. Wolfley?
Thank you. I wanted to ask on the quick question on the reporting potential if we ended up having to take care of that. How burdensome is that in terms of man hours or other expenses? Is this just a trivial administrivia sort of thing, or is it a meaningful effort if it eventually falls on us?
I would characterize it more as ministerial and not an enormous burden. And the county or the city would work closely with the county, if the county is still the tax collector at that time, to derive some of the information. There have been a lot of TIF transactions done in Maryland over the years, going 20 25, perhaps even 30 years back, and I'm not personally aware of any situation where there has never been an administrator in place, and the burden really falls on the administrator.
All right, thank you. I'll take the opportunity to, since we're going to be voting on this shortly anyway, to once again reemphasize my opposition to this entire endeavor. I have been, I guess, my opposition to the Carrington development, the expansion of its housing units, the annexation, and the entirety of it has been something that I've been opposed to, and I don't think there's any secrets about that. It's been well noted. But I just do want to reiterate, my concerns about impact on traffic. It's been a constant concern of our constituents, and this compounds the problem. Impact on schools, it's a big concern, again, for all of our constituents about what happens in our community schools. And then, of course, the general overdevelopment concerns that have been raised, not just in my district, but across the community. I'll tack on to that specifically with regards to the TIF, I'm particularly concerned and have been vocal about in my opposition that there really has not been a demonstrated need by the developer that they actually need the money. Developers, as a matter of habit, are typically expected to put in the infrastructure that it's associated with their development without calling upon local jurisdictions to supplement their revenue. The overall costs, frankly, are not that big in the overall scheme. So I'm really quite concerned about that, and I've mentioned that over the course of time. There was also a fairly well understood fact that if we didn't provide the TIF, this would be something that would happen anyway, so we might as well get on board, which of course is not what a TIF is for. A TIF is only supposed to be for situations where the item would not occur except for the support of the city. And then close out with the fact that this reflects a tremendous contribution on the part of city over the course of the life of these bonds. Based on discussions that we've had before, that's $30 million in tax payments that will be going to make these bond payments for the infrastructure that will support this development. And to put that into context, as we're going through our budget even now, our real property taxes for this year are supposed to be around $28 million. So we are actually giving away $30 million worth of future tax revenue that would undermine, in my mind, the overall fiscal value of having this property in the city. It's nothing new, and I just wanted to get it out there. So that's my reasons for opposing this, as I have in the past, and we'll, unfortunately, I think we'll see it moving forward, but I wanted to reiterate. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Dr. Ott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of questions for staff. My first question is, in the event of a default, it's my understanding that the city would not be responsible for fees. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. All right. With regard to schools, my understanding is that the closest school, elementary school, to that development would be Pointer Ridge Elementary School, and they're underpopulated. The closest high school to that property would probably be Douglas, Frederick Douglass High School, and I believe they're also underpopulated. With regard to the traffic, we do have a commitment with the developer that the southbound side of 301 will be increased by 1 lane.
Correct.
And we also have covenants which I got together with the developer and also with the assistance from our city attorney to make sure that we had good language in the covenant, and that covenant also indicates the increase of 1 additional lane on northbound 301. With regard to the development meeting the criteria, we have gone over that. Mr. John Henry King went over that with us. And it appears through the dialogue that we had and the information we received from Mr. John Henry King that the development does meet the criteria for the TIF. With regard to taxes, taxes in the long run should be increased because we will see that we're going to get an expansion of the tax base by this particular project. And there's also a possibility of annexation of another particular parcel of land, which will also increase the tax base. And the other possibility of the increase of that particular tax base will not really affect all of the city services. And by that I mean we're not talking about city services providing trash collection, snow removal, et cetera. So a lot of the public works activities would not be coming forth from the city budget. And with that, I end my questions.
Any other questions, council?
Sure, I have a question.
Yes.
So I understand from a historical context that the annexation began in 2016, and part of the understanding was the athletic facility, the Colleton Athletic Complex. As we move forward with this, can we ensure that council is informed, as well as the residents, about the development with that as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so no other questions. Dr. Trout, want to make a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move for the approval of Resolution R2219, and this is for South Lake, formerly known as Carrington, and this is a TIF.
Second by Mrs. Gardner. Are there any questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, aye, aye. No, 5-2.
All right.
Mr. Gardner. Thank you, folks. You can move us into a work session.
Oh, no problem, Dr. Trout. I'd like to move to a closed work session,
For the
or
purpose.
budget session, pardon me. I'd like to adjourn the meeting to move into budget work session number 2.
Second. Any question on the motion? All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Okay, folks, we're going to go into a budget work session. Thank you all very much. Okay, take a minute. Let's go. Thank you.
Take credit.